Welcome to the Historical Interface Museum. You have selected
Britain, 1750 to 1900, expansion, trade and industry.
All evidence loaded and ready for investigation.
Load the options, Curator.
Certainly.
I'll take city life.
City life selected.
Question. What were these new industrial cities like?
AT2, cross-check, interpretation.
There's no one view of the past.
Gallery's a bit full, isn't it?
Heaving. So, where do you want to start?
I don't know.
Data to Visor.
Where are the fields of yesteryear? Swallowed up, engulfed by a glut of brick and mortar. Where once were hedgerows, stand street upon street. Where once glades of oak, foul factory gates. These are the walking cities. There's no tube, no bus, no cars. You want to work, you've got to live close, jostle for space. Men, women, children, livestock, all hug-a-mug and cozy in these overcrowded urban slums. And don't forget your nose plugs, folks. The stench is awful. And diseases, well, take your pick. There's typhus, TB, smallpox, diphtheria, cholera.
Come on, it can't have been that bad. This is just your view, right?
It's an interpretation, yes. But it's impossible to know exactly what things were really like in the past, so anything anybody says is just their view.
So you might be wrong.
Any normally sensitive person who saw Little Ireland in Manchester, or the East End of Leeds, or the overcrowded cellars in Liverpool was likely to respond with outrage and anger.
Prove it.
Okay, select any of the industrial towns, ask any question you like, and I'll find you the evidence.
You're on.
Map to Visor.
All right. So, how about what it looked like?
Bradford selected.
Every other factory town in England is a paradise in comparison to this hole. The air of Manchester lies like lead upon your head. In Birmingham, it is as if you are sitting with your nose in a stovepipe. In Leeds, you have to cough from the dust and stink, but you can put up with all that. In Bradford, however, you think you are in hell.
All right, that looks bad, but what about the dirt?
Leeds selected.
Acres on acres of little streets, unplanned, no paving stones above, only churned up mud thoroughfares, no sewers beneath, an occasional open space used as a common cess-yard, privies often ruinous, all most horribly foul, pigsties empty, since their usual inmates have been turned out to prey upon the garbage of the neighbourhood.
Dirty enough for you?
They're living like animals.
Select Manchester.
Selected.
A horde of ragged women and children swarm about here, as filthy as the swine that thrive upon the garbage heaps. The race that lives in these ruinous cottages or in dark, wet cellars, in measureless filth and stench, must really have plumbed the depths.
All right, you win. Plenty of evidence to show things were bad.
But we've hardly scraped the surface.
Aberdare selected.
There are whole rows of houses without any lavatories at all. The inmates have nowhere to go. They use the fields or even the streets. And what with that and the filth thrown out of the houses and left in the street, the town stinks. The courts are not fit for human habitation.
I want to see a court.
Load.
All right.
Because they were so narrow, very little sunlight could penetrate. These courts would have been teeming with people, and the houses had no kitchens or toilets, no running water.
How did they cope?
A standpipe supplied the water for the whole court, but this was only on for a few hours a day and was often polluted. There would also have been an open sewer or gutter for rubbish.
Ugh. Bring it to life.
Andrew Mearns, author, The Bitter Cry of Outcast London. Animate.
Inside, you go down rotten staircases, grope your way along dark and filthy passages swarming with vermin. 8 square feet. That's about the average size of many of these rooms. The walls and ceilings are black with filth through years of neglect. A window, half of it stuffed with rags to keep out the rain and the other half so begrimed that light cannot enter. Every room in these rotten and reeking tenements houses a family, often two. In one cellar I found a mother, a father, 3 children and 4 pigs. In another, a man ill with smallpox, his wife just recovering from the birth of her 8th child, and the other children running around half naked and covered in dirt.
No one I've heard so far lived in the slums, did they?
No, and that may have affected their interpretations.
Well, I want someone who lived there.
I'm afraid...
And don't give me that rubbish about working class people not reading or writing. There's got to be something.
All right.
Thank you.
This is Alice Foley. She wrote her story later in life, A Bolton Childhood.
My earliest dim memories are of lots of people crowded into our only room. There was a wooden cradle, rocked by a string attached to a person nearest the window. I suppose the baby must have been cuddled against a warm bosom at odd moments, but I don't remember that. What I do remember is how poor mothers daubed their breasts with soot to discourage suckling, and the howl of rage produced at the offer of those coal-black nipples.
How did anyone survive?
Thousands didn't. Diseases thrived in these conditions. The life expectancy for a person from a labouring family in Leeds in 1842 was 19 years.
Why didn't someone do something about it?
No connection had been made between dirt and disease.
So the population went down, right?
Wrong. The death rate was high in the towns, but the birth rate was higher, so the population continued to grow.
Population of London, 1750, 657,000. 1851, 2,491,000. Population of Liverpool, 22,000, 376,000. Glasgow, 23,000, 345,000. Manchester.
Cities can't have been too bad.
Sorry?
Well, people wouldn't have lived there, would they? They'd have moved to the country.
Gallery reform. Country life engaged.
I'll take that one. And a text.
There were trim villages, with a grey church in the middle. There was the pleasant tinkle of the blacksmith's anvil, the basket maker peeling his willow, the wheelwright putting the last touch to a blue cart with red wheels. At the well, clean and comely women carrying yoked buckets. The homesteads were those of rich farmers. Old England was the best of all possible countries, a nation of clean little market towns without factories.
See what I mean? Sounds really lovely.
But that's the view of a novelist.
Doesn't stop her being right, and I bet there's more that backs her up. There you go. That looks nice. And another text.
These villages in the South Downs are beautiful to behold. There is an appearance of comfort about the dwellings of the labourers all along here. The houses are good and warm. The gardens are neat and full of vegetables of the best kinds.
Interpretation, contrast. Painting through.
What's this?
The other side of the story.
Most of the cottages I visited were mud hovels with cesspools or piles of filth close to the doors. They're damp 3 parts of the year, and one had only a single small pane of glass stuck in the mud wall for a window. The people are poor, dirty, in rags, living almost wholly on bread and potatoes.
Why do things always seem so bad?
People tend to describe the very best or the very worst and leave out what's just ordinary.
So were villages better or worse places to live than towns?
Farm workers had low pay and long hours. There was a growing feeling that the towns offered a wider choice of better paid jobs, better housing, more freedom.
Fair enough. Re-engage city life.
Gallery reform. Re-engaged.
Ah, the grandeur of the Victorian City.
What grandeur? All I've seen so far is just slums and filthy conditions.
The evidence examined so far has supported a negative interpretation of city life. You could select the experiences of the rich or middle class. If you had the money for a horse-drawn carriage, you could live in the more comfortable suburbs. Or select a more upbeat interpretation of life in the back streets.
Okay.
Life in the street was interesting. We had a pale, stuttering boy who walked muffins from door to door, whilst on wintry nights the hot pea man came along, ringing his bell, inviting custom for his green, mushy peas, giving off a savoury smell on the chilly air.
What else was good about a city for someone like her?
Where is she from?
Bolton, a very fine town specializing in very fine cotton.
Population, 1850, 60,000. 1870, 104,000. 1890, 149,000.
And growing fast. Half of Bolton's workforce were in the factories, many more in engineering workshops, coal mines, bleaching crafts, forges and foundries.
Move to ground.
Ground probe selected.
The Town Hall, 1873, built in the classical style with sculptures by Calder Marshall. Excuse me.
I want to look round. This is no good. It's all modern.
Look up. The original Victorian building.
So what shops would there have been?
Select an old trade directory. They list what every building was used for.
Mrs. Haddock, milliner. The Mexican Cheroot and Cigar Company. Miss E.J. Evans, flower dealer. Richard Day, hairdresser. S. Cheatham and Son, hosiers and hatters. The Bolton Junior Burns Club. Tate and Son.
This looks old.
Archive match.
Plenty of Victorian Bolton survives. Old Hall Street.
Archive match.
The town hall in the distance. Whitaker's department store on the corner there. Knowsley Street.
Archive match.
Victoria Hall, still used for Methodist services. And the 1855 Market Hall.
Select Market Hall.
Remember, this was before refrigeration. People had to shop every day. Halls like this replaced traditional open-air markets.
Would Alice Foley have shopped here?
Almost certainly, but it wasn't the only place available.
It was the heyday of the corner shop. Mother went to a higgledy-piggledy place kept by a friend of hers named Kitty. Neither Mother nor Kitty could read or write, but they had their own symbols for reckoning up the score, which was later chalked on the door. As a small girl, I usually perched on a sack of taters, half absorbing gossip about bad husbands and hard times.
There were 200 butchers, 170 confectioners, 127 fruiterers and greengrocers, 60 newsagents, 60 bakers, 30 tripe dealers, 313 pubs, 60 primary schools.
I'll take pubs.
The pubs hardly ever closed. They offered interest and action, noise and warmth. There was music and singing, gambling and games.
Sounds like fun.
Many Victorians blamed the pubs for ruined families, neglected wives, hungry children and debts.
When Father was recovering from a boozing bout, his temper was most vicious and unpredictable. I recall him following Mother out kitchen, whining monotonously. "Lend us a penny, Meg. Give us a penny, I'm choking." At length, in a fit of desperation, a penny would be flung onto the table. Then Mother would snatch up her shawl, vanish into the street, and seek temporary refuge in a neighbour's home.
There were 78 milliners, 101 boot and shoe dealers, 85 cloggers, 35 pawnbrokers.
Pawnbrokers? What's that?
I don't know what we'd have done without 'em. Every week, it seemed, we'd nip in smartly at the side door of the Golden Balls to trade in our Sunday best for a little cash. Then come payday, in again to buy 'em back. The pawn shop was owned by a big jovial man named Bill. He made my mother laugh with his jokes and ready gossip. He was always perched on a high stool behind a long wire-netted counter. As my mother was a regular customer, he never opened her parcel, but placed it in a cubicle above his head, then slipped some silver coins to my mother under the grill.
Why does he seem so cheerful? It must have been terrible to have to sell your clothes.
In the rows of terraced houses, fun started outside your own front door. There were peddlers, singers, rag and bone men with their handcarts festooned with strings of bright balloons. And there was more. Cycling, brass bands, pigeon fanciers, canary breeders, whippet racing, cricket, football.
I'll take football.
Bolton Olympic were the first working-class team to win the FA Cup when they beat the Old Etonians. They went on to help found the Professional Football League in 1889.
I bet they didn't have any crowd trouble in those days.
Incorrect. If there was a bad result, the pitch would be bombarded with sticks and orange peel. Officials and players were assaulted as they left the field.
After the affair was over, I was attacked by a mob of infuriated beings in petticoats, supposed to be women, who were, without doubt in some cases, mothers, if I may judge from the innocent-looking babes suckling at their breasts. They brandished their umbrellas and shook their fists in my face.
Loop ended.
What now?
City life. Change vector. Awaiting selection.
The Victorian City gave people a freedom of choice they'd never had before. More jobs, a greater variety of food available, more time for leisure,
Select.
theaters and music halls.
Give me a text then.
Ma was positively overcome by the comedy and laughed till every one of the immense bows on her ample cap trembled. The governess put a handkerchief to her mouth and merely pretended to laugh.
I'll have a reconstruction.
There was a young fella from Leeds who swallowed a packet of seeds. They started to sprout through his nose and his mouth. Now his face is covered in weeds.
What's this then?
Crossness Pumping Station, London.
Sewers were laid for decent drainage. Public baths were built. These were for relaxation, but for hygiene too.
That one.
They weren't just interested in clean and healthy bodies, but healthy minds. They built art galleries, schools, universities, libraries. Like this one. Notice the Gothic style of architecture the Victorians liked so much.
It's like a cathedral.
Talking of which, don't forget all the churches they built. Churches provided a real focus for many people, not just in terms of Christian faith, but for social reasons too. There were church teas, clubs, outings, singing in the choir.
Where's this?
Manchester Town Hall.
Amazing.
The local councillors, the city fathers, wanted to celebrate Manchester's industrial success to show off its prosperity.
It's fantastic.
Caution.
This is one side of city life. Remember the slums? That was the flip side. So what were these new industrial cities like?
All systems disengaging.